Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a homeowner association neighbor assaulted my kid and sued me after I refused to let her brats use my jacuzzi and trespass on my property. The first one starts like this. A few years ago I decided that I was gonna spoil myself after I got my tax refund and I spent it on an outdoor jacuzzi. I'm a single father and I knew that both myself as well as my son would enjoy it. Whenever we went on vacation and a hotel had one, he would get really excited about it. He was 15 at the time of this story, so I figured he was old enough to be safe, even though we had a rule that no using it unless I was at home. I had a little garden area with a deck and the spot was perfect for it to go. Right away, the jacuzzi caught the attention of my neighbor Karen, who sure lived up to that name. She felt that she had a right to use the jacuzzi because she could not afford one and I was throwing it in her face. I have zero clue how getting something and not even talking about it was throwing it in her face, but I will chalk that up to her just being a Karen. She did not even start off asking if she could use it and instead jumped right to trespassing through the bushes that separated our properties and used it while I was not home. I caught her running back to her side the other day along with her kids who used it too. I decided to put up signs that said no trespassing, as well as putting up a fence between the properties instead of just the bushes that she could easily get through. My son was actually the voice of reason to me that told me that I shouldn't let my guard down. He explained to me exactly what a Karen was and that he had a feeling what I did was not gonna stop her. I could tell that he was upset about the home being trespassed on, and I assume it also scared him a little bit. After putting up the signs, this Karen neighbor became even more crazy. I think I forgot to mention that I'm living actually in an HOA, aka homeowner association. This Karen neighbor was an HOA board member and he felt personally insulted by me putting up no trespassing signs, and he claimed that the signs and especially the fence were violating HOA bylaws. One day I got into a screaming match with Karen right outside my house when he once again urged me, or rather threatened me, that he would sue me if I did not remove the fence and the no trespassing signs. My son heard everything and I had to talk to him to calm him down. I assured him that I would keep an eye out still for Karen and if he saw her coming onto the property to tell me. Like most 15-year-olds, he listens to the parts that he wants to and decided next time Karen snuck onto the property, he tried to handle things himself. I heard yelling and as soon as my son's voice was part of it, I went to go and look for him. I found him in the backyard and I just caught Karen slapping him across the face. She was wet and I assumed had just come out of my jacuzzi where he caught her. Her two kids were still in the water. Seeing my son get slapped kind of made my body move without my mind even thinking. I was a wrestler back in the day and I guess I still remembered stuff because I had her on the ground in a minute. I told my son to go and call the police. I kept her on the ground like that until the police came and told me to get off and let her up. She started screaming that I had assaulted her and wanted me arrested and sent to jail. That I damaged her young children for needing to witness the whole thing and not letting anybody else speak. I walked away with one officer so I could explain what happened with my son. Son, I came outside and saw her in the jacuzzi with her kids. I told her to get out and off of my property and then she got out and started screaming. I threatened to call the cops on her for trespassing and that was when she slapped me. I did not even try and lie about my role and I admitted that seeing him get hit put me into some sort of protective parent mode. The officers assured me that I was defending my son on my own property and since I did not actually hurt Karen, I was not gonna get arrested. Karen on the other hand was now getting a mouthful from the police about breaking into my property and clearly ignoring the signs I put up. I did not catch her entire conversation, but by the time I finished, I managed to listen in on some of it. Karen, I have the right to use that jacuzzi. He is going to show it off. My children deserve to swim too, and he shouldn't have the rights to stop me. Cop, ma'am, this is private property, and he owns the jacuzzi. He does not have to let anybody else use it, and you're ignoring his desire to be left alone. That's a problem. You could very well be arrested today for trespassing. Do you understand that? Karen, you don't care about my kids either. You want them to cry and then be scared even more seeing their mother taken away. They look terrified right now because of all of you bursting in here. Cop, I think they're scared because their mother is yelling. How old are your boys? Karen, they are only 8 and 3 years old, and now they're going to grow up all messed up because of you and OP. Cop, ma'am, you're aware that putting a child as small as 3 in a jacuzzi is extremely dangerous, right? Cue Karen getting a lecture on things that I didn't even know regarding jacuzzis and small children. Apparently, they cannot regulate the temperature as well as adults, so any child under 5 years old really should not be in one, especially considering that he cannot touch the bottom and there is zero safety in place for him. After she screams at the officers more for telling her how to parent, they clearly had enough of her. They arrested her for not only trespassing, but also endangerment of a child. And of course, assaulting my kid as well. She also admitted to leaving the 3-year-old in the jacuzzi for long periods of time and even leaving him there with only his brother to watch him. She seemed to find no issue with it and said that the warm water was good for children and the CDC did not know what they were talking about. The kid had a medical examination after Karen was arrested and well, they found both old and healing burns caused from being in the hot water too long. Her not seeming to care was the final straw for the courts and she was found guilty and being sent to jail for both the child endangerment and the trespassing, with the children being put into the custody of the state. I don't know how laws work with her getting them back once she's released, but I really hope then somebody else gets to raise those boys and she has to stay far away. As a parent, I could not imagine being that uncaring about the well-being of your child, especially one that young. Even with my son getting ready to go off to college, I'm still a nervous mess wanting to make sure that he's gonna be okay. I hope that she learns a lesson in jail, but based on what I've been told and read about Karen's, I doubt that will happen. She will most likely think the entire thing is my fault for the rest of her life, and I can live with that if it means her kids are now safe from her. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Landlord installed a key box to let strangers access my house without supervision. I had been having several issues in my apartment within the last year or so. It is an old apartment though, and whenever something was broken, the landlord would get it fixed pretty quickly. So I cannot complain too much about him not wanting to fix things for me, but lining up times for repairs was always a hassle. He hired outside contractors for work and I had to be home to let them in. My job schedule changed though and I ended up not being home for most of the day anymore. So after the 3rd time of him trying to make an appointment for a plumber to come and me not being able to let him in, I thought I would go and talk to him about it. Can we talk about the plumbing issue for a minute? Landlord: I know you have a plumbing problem, that's why I sent a plumber. I know, but I work during the day and there's nobody to let him in. I was wondering if you could be able to unlock the door for him. Landlord: well, I'm busy too, and I cannot always be there waiting to open every door for every repairman in the building. I'll figure something out though. This seemed odd to me because his job was being the landlord. I would think part of the job would be making sure that workers could access the units. He did come up with a solution though and installed a lockbox where the workers would just need to enter a code and they could access a key. I was not too thrilled with the idea of strangers being able to access my key with a code. I had to worry about them not returning it or coming back later and getting the key again. I brought up these concerns to my landlord, who told me he was constantly changing the codes and making sure the keys were returned. He assured me it was a common practice that he used before. Still, I had a strong feeling that something was not quite right, and usually if my gut told me something was wrong, then something was wrong. I asked him for the code and after a bunch of researching, I found that he made the lockbox code 123. I tried to explain that the code was too easy and he said he would be changing it often. He made up a bunch of excuses and told me that if I wanted my apartment to be fixed, I would have to just trust him in what he was doing. So I went against my better judgment and let it continue. One day I got back to my apartment and saw that things were missing. A nice crystal vase that used to belong to my mother, my cable box and for some reason my blender. I was not even scheduled to have any work done, so I don't know who would have gotten into my apartment. I thought that maybe someone broke in because the code was too easy. So I called up my friend and asked him what I should do about the stuff that got stolen. I didn't know if it was legally the fault of the landlord or me because I was knowingly allowing this to happen. My friend was looking things up on the internet and came across something that he thought I should know. Friend: are you moving? No, why? Friend: isn't your apartment 412 at this address? Yeah. Well, I am seeing that the apartment is up for sale. What? Friend, yeah, it says to contact the landlord for information on seeing the apartment. Me, please tell me that you are just messing with me. He sent me the link and it turns out that he was not joking. My landlord was trying to sell my apartment without even telling me. My guess was that he would make up some excuse to evict me as soon as he got a buyer. The asking price was more than what I was paying now, so he clearly was trying to pull something sneaky. I emailed him from a fake email saying that I was interested in the apartment and if I could come the next day to see it. I was in pure shock when I got an email back saying how not only could I come view the apartment tomorrow, but to enter 123 into the key lock to gain access. This slime ball was giving out my key access code to complete strangers and not even supervising them seeing my apartment. I was furious and spent the rest of the night both looking up how illegal this actually was and trying to catch the thieves in the act. Turns out he was in violation of state laws that protected tenants and the penalties were strong. Not only could he get charged for assisted trespassing in every instance of someone coming into my apartment without my knowledge, but he would also have financial penalties that include losing my security deposit, owing me back rent from all the months it was going on. So I drafted a letter to him outlining all the ways that what he was doing was illegal and that any further contact with me should be done in writing or through email. I was also looking up new apartments to move to because no matter what happened now I did not feel safe here and I was going to have to go through the pain of finding new apartments and moving again. As you could expect, he replied to my letter saying that he had no idea what I was talking about. I let him pretend that I didn't know for now and instead installed a hidden camera that would send a live stream to my phone. The next time someone walked in to try and look at the apartment, I called the police. I knew that the couple looking at it wasn't going to really get in trouble for trespassing once they tell the police what is really going on. I get to watch from my phone as police show up and explain to the couple that the owner called about a break-in. I didn't have any audio because I just went for a really cheap camera. I could see the confusion on their faces though, and probably they were explaining about what the landlord told them. One person even pulled out their phone and tried to show the officer the email that the landlord sent giving them the code. They all left and I couldn't see what happened after that, but I was going to find out soon enough. They got a warrant to search the landlord's email to see how many people he had given this code out to. Each one was considered trespassing and he got hit with a ton of fines. He did not end up going to jail or something, but he did owe me back 2 months rent, which was how long he was showing my apartment to people by giving them a code. I don't know the full extent of what happened to him or if he is still the landlord of that building. As soon as I got the money, I used it to move into a much better apartment. I knew I should have trusted my gut that something was wrong when he wanted to install that box in the first place. It's a lesson to be learned that a landlord is a businessman first and foremost. Although guys, I gotta admit, that doesn't explain that this landlord is an absolute douchebag, it seems. Anyway, no matter how friendly or willing they are to help you, you need to remember that in the majority of situations they are probably not your friend. Trusting him should have been something that I shouldn't have taken so lightly too. I was lucky that I was able to catch what he did and get off easy. Most people that get screwed over from their landlord are not as lucky as I was. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would love to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with any landlords from hell? If you have, then please don't forget to let us know about your experiences in the comments. And while you're at it, I would really appreciate it if you could also post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support the channel. Thank you so much in advance, your support is very much appreciated. The next one is titled, "You should have given me the job instead." I would like to start off by saying that I am not a spiteful person, but after reading a post regarding someone's revenge on a former boss, I was reminded of a former a-hole manager that I had a hand in getting fired. I am a chemist by trade. I work in a lab mixing chemicals together to make viable products for consumers. I once worked for a company that made all types of plastic. They were in serious need of a chemist and a friend who Mr. VP recommended I interview. The job was to be the lab manager. I would be responsible for 3 other chemists and 2 QC employees. I went through the very long interview process and was offered a job. However, it was not the job that I interviewed for. The management team decided that I was too young, I was 25, so they gave the job to someone else who was older. That person would be the a-hole manager. I was given a chemist job, it was a good job and it paid well, so whatever. So my first day on the job I am introduced to a-hole manager. Upon meeting him, he seemed to relish in the fact that he got the management job over me and immediately started to show it. The lab was going through somewhat of a transformation. The previous manager was a pack rat, as in he kept every single piece of paper that was ever handed to him. So my first assigned task was to go through every single piece of paper to see if it was relevant. I had to physically remove each piece of paper from the box and scan it over for said relevant info, even though the box clearly said 1972 on it and all it was pamphlets from shows or old chemical brochures. I still had to go through it. And by the way guys, who keeps brochures from 1972? Maybe the previous manager was some sort of a hoarder as well. Anyway, this took me weeks. I was the only person assigned this task, everyone else did their normal job. In the meantime, he was busy showing up for work late, leaving early for his 2-hour lunch, disappearing for an hour and a half after lunch and leaving work early. He maybe was seen visible working for 1 hour a day. Fast forward to me finishing my assigned task, the manager finally allows me to do some actual chemistry work. This is when I found out that he has no real experience working in a chemistry lab, or being a chemist. How do I know? Because the dude decided to mix a couple of chemicals that don't play nicely with each other and then proceeds to throw it in the microwave. 60 seconds later we were short 1 microwave and had a new respect for the fire extinguisher. He followed this up with leaving industrial-sized mixers on high speed while unattended, big no-no, they could kill someone, starting another small fire in the plant and completely ruined an industrial-sized mill. After a couple months of his unsafe lab practices, they continued, I started noticing some changes in his personality, specifically towards people that he deemed a threat to his authority. He got into a very loud verbal argument with our first production manager, who then quit, then proceeded to get into an almost physical argument with one of our salesmen, who also quit. Once those two were off his list, he turned his attention towards me. Now, for a little backstory, I mentioned earlier that I was friends with the VP, I still am. I have worked for him before and I enjoyed it a lot. Hence the reason I applied for the job. I'm the type of person that shows up early and leaves late. I always have and always will. I take great pride in doing good work. Well, the manager had took our friendship and my work ethic as a threat to his authority and made it his life's goal to screw with every single part of my day. He would assign me jobs to do, I would do them, and then he would berate me in front of everyone about how I did it wrong. Then he would tell me how to do it right, and I would fix my mistake and do it exactly how he told me to do, and he would come back and berate me again in front of everyone about how it was still effed up, and he did this for everything. The best part about all of this was the end-of-day meetings. These meetings consisted of me going into his office, closing the door, and him yelling and swearing at me for at least 30 minutes. Topics, you ask? Think of one. It was probably my fault in some way. This went on 2 to 3 months until I cracked. I cracked because he got physical, as in he shoved me when my back was turned. Now, I'm not a small person, I am athletically built, I played football, I ran track and I lifted weights. I don't know what got into him, but it got into him in a big way. I was shocked. I had never had a boss do that before, I don't know why, but I just let it happen. So when he was done screaming in my face, I just left and went straight to the bar and had a drink and another and another. That was the day I decided that I had enough. I wasn't putting up with any more BS. I am admittedly not a very creative person when it comes to revenge, so the only type of revenge on a boss that I had ever seen, way before Reddit, was from the movie Office Space. I literally did what that guy did. I just showed up and did absolutely nothing. I came and went when I wanted. I took 45-minute smoke breaks, 2-hour lunches, came late and left early. This drove the manager absolutely insane. And every time he tried to talk to me about it, I did exactly what the guy in the movie did. I just never stopped and walked right past him. Every time he wanted another meeting, I just never showed up. I went home instead. So after a week or two of this, I happened to be wandering around the office and I stumble into my VP friend. He seemed stressed out and I inquired as to why. The safety inspector is here and he will be doing a walkthrough of the plant, he said. He told me to let everyone in the lab know that he was here and not to screw up. His words, not mine. Well, because I had literally quit doing what I was supposed to do and the manager had to do what I was supposed to do, seeing that he is a damn walking disaster, I took off for my 2-hour lunch. I wander back into the plant after my 2-hour lunch, my food was excellent, and the situation was turning worse. Every bigwig in the company is in there and they are all freaking out. I walk up and the first thing the VP asked me was, "What did you see?" Being friends with him, I replied, "I didn't see anything. What happened?" So, word on the street is this. Manager decided that he owned the place that day and went out and used one of the industrial stand-up mixers, think KitchenAid mixer that makes cookies but 8 feet tall, to mix something in a 1-gallon container. I was supposed to be working on this project, but obviously I wasn't. Now, these things are made for containers that hold 500 to 1000 gallon containers, so he puts this container under this gigantic mixer and realizes that the container cannot be strapped down with heavy-duty chains. Side note, you need to strap down the containers. These things spin at 3000 to 5000 RPM. I have seen 1000 gallon containers that spin that weight around 4000 pounds. That is some scary stuff. So what does manager do? He grabs a roll of duct tape and tapes everything on, of course. Once he plasters everything with duct tape, he cranks it up to full blast and walks away. Also a big no-no, for those of you that don't know, all machines in any industrial shop have to be manned at all times, no exceptions. About 2 minutes into this act of stupidity, in walks the safety inspector. One of the production guys sees this running and promptly runs over and shuts the machine down right as the safety inspector sees it. Over walks the inspector to inquire into what the hell is going on right as manager walks out of the lab freaking out, asking who shut off his mixer and of course cussing and swearing. He then proceeds to turn the mixer back on, cuss out the production worker and asks the safety inspector, "What the F are you looking at?" and walks away. So, once I am done laughing my butt off, I calmly inform my VP and all the other bigwigs that I'm not surprised. I inform them of their lost microwave, the fires, the destroyed mill. They knew all about the mill, they just didn't know how it happened. I told them about the confrontation that occurred in his office and I told them the truth about some other things that they didn't know about. The bottle of scotch in his desk, drunk on the job, etc. The fire in my VP friend's eyes was burning hot enough to destroy worlds at this point, and he turns around and tells everyone that there will be a meeting regarding today's events in the morning and orders everyone, 40+ people, to go home. We show up the next day and the manager was nowhere to be found. The point of the meeting was to inform everyone that manager was not allowed within 500 feet of the building and that if we saw him near the building, we needed to call the police. What I found out later was that the police already had him. When my VP friend went to fire him, manager got physical and the security guards with my VP friend got physical back. He was charged with a whole slew of crap too much to remember. Later that day, I was promoted to lab manager and was given a raise. We celebrated with a glass of scotch that we found in manager's desk. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance and I hope to see you again tomorrow.